It hurts when I sit. German female POWs were shocked by British soldiers' treatment. They expected screams, torture, maybe even bullets. Instead, what they heard was the sound of teacups being set down, blankets unfolding, and calm English voices saying, "You're safe now." For captured German women in World War II, nurses, clerks, and radio operators, the enemy they'd been warned about their entire lives did not appear. And many of them were left shocked by one overwhelming realization: the British soldiers weren't the monsters they were promised. By the late stages of World War II, thousands of German women served alongside the Wehrmacht as medical staff and communications auxiliaries. They weren't frontline fighters, but the war came to them anyway. As Allied forces advanced across France, Italy, and finally Germany itself, these women began falling into enemy hands. Their biggest enemy wasn't capture. It was what they believed capture meant. For years, Nazi propaganda warned soldiers and civilians alike. The British will torture you. They will beat you. They will kill prisoners. To many of these women, surrender felt like a death sentence. Some wept openly when British soldiers reached them. Others shook so badly they couldn't speak. Medical staff prepared themselves for brutal interrogations that never came. But instead of fists, they were handed blankets. Instead of threats, they were offered warm food. British soldiers escorted them to temporary holding camps where rules of the Geneva Convention were carefully followed. They were searched respectfully. They were separated by gender. They were given medical checkups and treatment, even by the same men they feared. For women who had gone months without real rest, without proper meals, without clean clothing, the experience felt surreal. The shock wasn't caused by cruelty. The shock came from the lack of it. Some POWs later wrote about the strange emotional whiplash, how simple decency felt almost painful to receive after years of fear conditioning. Several memoirs describe moments where women were overwhelmed by exhaustion and shame. They interpreted medical examinations or the soreness of cramped transportation not as mistreatment, but as proof they should have suffered more. One former nurse reportedly remarked during post-war interviews, "We waited for the cruelty to begin. It never came." Instead, they experienced a quiet psychological collapse. The enemy they'd feared simply didn't exist. British camp doctors treated illnesses. Red Cross supplies arrived regularly. Mail delivery to families began. Even small comforts, recreation time, books, and organized schooling were introduced. And for the first time in years, many women felt human again. Not as tools of war, not as ideological symbols, just people. And that realization carried a deeper pain than physical suffering ever had. Everything they had been taught was a lie. The true breaking point came not during captivity, but during reflection. One woman wrote years later, "I expected punishment for being German, but what I received was kindness I didn't know how to accept." For many former POWs, the hardest moment was not fear, it was guilt. Guilt for believing propaganda, guilt for participating in a war fueled by deception, and guilt for discovering compassion from the very soldiers they were trained to hate. World War II stories often focus on brutality, and rightly so. But buried within the horror are moments that remind us, human dignity didn't fully die, even when the world was tearing itself apart. For captured German women once trembling with fear, it wasn't violence that left the deepest mark. It was mercy, a quiet truth. Sometimes the greatest shock of war is realizing your enemy still knows how to be kind. If this story made you reflect, subscribe and join us for more human stories hidden within history's darkest chapters.